All right, welcome to the K-State Garden Hour series. I can't believe it's already December, and it's our hope that you have a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday as well as a Christmas holiday if those are holidays you celebrate. Thank you for joining us today. This series is hosted by K-State Research and Extension. My name is Lauren Fick, and I am the Horticulture Extension Agent for Ellis and Barton County, Kansas. Before we get started, we do have a couple of housekeeping notes to go over. If you are not familiar with these webinar series, we use a question and answer feature for questions related to the presentation. And this is where we will look for questions during the session. So at the bottom of the screen, there should be a Q&A option for you. And you just click on it, and that's where you can put your question, and we'll answer as we get to it. Ariel is our moderator, meaning she's going to be checking the chat box and the Q&A for questions. She is the extension agent in Shawnee County. And today's webinar will also be recorded. And after the presentation is over, we will post it to our K-State Garden Hour website. We typically upload some additional resources as well relating to the presentation. On our website, you will also have access to previous topics and upcoming topics in the series. Ariel will send this link over chat, so be on the lookout for that. The events in this series have also been promoted on our K-State Horticulture and Natural Resources Facebook page. Ariel will also put that in the chat. And with this page, you can stay up to date with our Horticulture and Natural Resources department, as well as the upcoming topics in this series. If you would, be sure to like, share, and use the hashtag K-State Garden Hour to help us promote this program. This webinar series has allowed us to continue to provide extension education related to horticulture and gardening, given the circumstances we are in today. Everyone involved in the development of this series is an extension professional for K-State. Most of us have a background in horticulture education or a related discipline. But most of all, we each have a love for gardening and the natural environment. I personally love this series because it allows me to learn new things from my peers, and being virtual gives us the opportunity to connect with audiences all across the country. Today's topic is holiday horticulture. I'm pleased to introduce our speaker, Cassie Homan. She is the horticulture agent for the Post Rock Extension District, which covers 5 counties. So she has always got her hands full, and we are so grateful to have her here to present today. And I look forward, and I'm hoping you do too, to learning more about holiday horticulture. Please give us just a few moments while we transition.
Thank you, Lauren. So we're going to start out today with a video to show you kind of the commercial side of how poinsettias are grown.
Poinsettias. They're the much-loved plants that we use to brighten our spaces for the holidays. These festive plants that bring us so much joy have had a long journey. From planting to perfection, this is your poinsettia's story.
Hi, I'm Jason from West Coast Gardens. Welcome to our family business, where we've been growing poinsettias for over 40 years. Poinsettias take a lot of care and attention to create a real quality product. Let me take you to the beginning, in July, where it all starts.
It's mid-July, and though the holidays seem far away, the young poinsettias have arrived. These tiny clippings have had a long journey. They've come from mother plants in Africa and Central America. Now that roots have grown, these plugs are ready for their final pots. Here, they'll spend the next 120 days growing and being cared for. Once poinsettias are big enough, each plant is pinched back by hand to encourage the right fullness, height, and number of bracts.
On this poinsettia, it's these bright leaves that create the interest in the plant, but it's not actually the flower. The flower is deep inside the center. It's called cyathea.
When they are this young, the way to tell what color the bracts will be is to look at the leaf stems. These stems hint at the color of the mature bracts. As the plants get bigger, the pots are spaced to give them more room to grow. Each plant is given a direct water line to receive the right amount of moisture and nutrients for proper growth. The temperature in the greenhouse is carefully monitored. If it fluctuates too dramatically, the poinsettias will be stressed and the bracts will change color either too early or too late for the holiday season.
One of the critical things in growing poinsettias in a greenhouse is air circulation. When the poinsettia plants are just gently moving, or you see a leaf just moving, that is adequate for the amount of air movement we need in a greenhouse. This helps them stay really strong and robust.
Poinsettias also need specific light levels. They especially enjoy their beauty sleep. Dark nights with no lights are essential for the brightest bracts at the right time. After months of care, the poinsettias make their debut on the retail floor and await their new home.
All right, I really liked that video and I wanted everybody to see that because growing poinsettias is really a big process. So if you caught that at the beginning, they said that it starts in July. So it's really kind of a mini month thing for growers, and it's often one of the most finicky crops they grow. So it's really economically important, but one of the hardest they have to grow. So I have a lot of appreciation for large commercial greenhouse growers. But so I'll go ahead and get started. Sharing my screen. I hope everybody can see that. So my name is Cassie Homan. I'm the horticulture agent for the Post-Rock District. And I am super excited to talk about poinsettias and holiday plants today because it's really been a Christmas tradition for me since I was young. I grew up helping my mom in her flower shop, and we would sell poinsettias. So from a really young age, I was helping grow and sell poinsettias. And then in high school, I was able to grow them through our FFA class. And then at K-State, I worked at the greenhouses and grew them in a larger scale there at K-State. So it was really great that getting that experience. And actually, a lot of these pictures that are on the slides today are from the K-State greenhouses. So that is one of the reasons why I was excited to have this topic. So we're going to start off with a Christmas trivia poll. So I want this to be a fun Zoom. I know a lot of us are probably zoomed out from all of our webinars we'd had to be on, but we're going to start off with a fun little trivia. And don't worry, it's just for fun. I won't be able to see what you put as your answer. It's totally just kind of random Christmas facts. So we're going to start off with Christmas tree trivia. Whoops.
So everyone should see a poll that popped up in a little window on their screen. Perfect. I see people answering. So
All right, I'll give you about 5 more seconds to answer it. Looks like we have quite a few people answered. Okay, so the first question was, what was the tallest Christmas tree ever to be displayed? And the answer for that is actually A, or the last one in the poll. So a 221-foot Douglas fir. So that was put up in the Northgate Shopping Center in Seattle in the early 2000 years. So they can be really big trees that we find. And then the second question was, what were the first artificial Christmas trees made out of? And this was definitely a trivia, kind of random fact, but it was actually the first ones were made in Germany out of goose feathers. So they would dye them green and create artificial trees out of them. So now you have some fun facts you can share at your holiday parties. Okay, so poinsettias are in the Euphorbiaceae family. And if you know anything about that family, a lot of those plants have kind of a milky sap to them. So like this picture shows, if you ever have broken a poinsettia leaf off or ripped the leaf, kind of a milky sap will come out. And this sap does have latex in it, so it can cause a little bit of skin irritation or itchiness. But the number one thing I wanted to get out of the way right in the beginning is that poinsettias are not poisonous. They're not toxic in any way. It was a huge misconception that was spread in the early 1900s that an urban legend of a 2-year-old boy was killed after eating one poinsettia leaf. Not true. So a huge myth. They've done many experiments on it, and they found that a child would have to eat about 600 leaves to actually exceed their experimental dose. So if you've heard that they're poisonous, that is 100% not true. I think it's a widely known misconception. I actually did a poll question on my Instagram yesterday, and I had so many of my friends that said yes, they're poisonous, and that's not true. So definitely, if you're scared that your pets or your kids might eat them, I don't think they're going to taste very good if they're eaten, but it's not going to hurt anyone. So definitely don't worry about that. But they are the #1 potted plant in the United States. So every year we buy a ton of poinsettias, which is awesome. And then one other quick thing I wanted to get out of the way before we really get into this presentation is there might be some controversy on how to say poinsettia. So I have heard people say poinsettia, poinsettia, but either way is totally fine. So in this picture, I took this from dictionary.com, and in the red circle there, you can see that they say poinsettia or poinsettia is totally fine. So no matter how many syllables you say it with, you are correct. So those were some 2 things I wanted to get out of the way before we get going. So poinsettias are native to Mexico. Tasco, Mexico is where they are found naturally, and they are huge shrubs. So this is a picture of a poinsettia in its natural habitat, and they can get up to 10 to 15 feet tall. So really big, nice shrubs. I think they're really cool. I would love to go to Mexico someday and see one in person, because that is, not what we're used to seeing in the United States. But when they first were grown in Mexico, the Aztec Indians cultivated them, and they were regarded as a sign of purity. So they really used them a lot around Christmas time. They would use the plant for dye, the red part of the plant for making dyes. And then that milky sap that we talked about, the Aztecs found that could counteract fever. So not just being a lovely plant, but also they used it for a lot of different purposes. Poinsettias came to the United States because of a man named Joel Robert Poinsett. So you can probably see how we got the name there of poinsettias from Joel Robert Poinsett. And he was actually the first United States ambassador to Mexico. So when he was in Mexico, he saw the flowers growing on the hillsides, and he sent some of the plants home to his greenhouse. So he was kind of an amateur botanist, and he had a greenhouse in Greenville, South Carolina. So he sent them there, and then he would give them to his friends and family. And that's kind of how they took off in the United States. These first plants were really fragile and weak. They weren't like the poinsettias we see today in the market. But that's how they came to the United States, thanks to Joel Robert Poinsett. And actually, a fun fact about this man, December 12th is National Poinsettia Day, thanks to Joel Robert Poinsett. It's kind of in his memory. So if you haven't bought your poinsettias yet, National Poinsettia Day would be a great day to go get some. So the next family to really take poinsettias and make them a Christmas tradition was the Ecke family. And they are a large greenhouse producer in the United States. They grow in California. Paul Ecke Sr., who is the man there in that red sweater kind of in the middle, the oldest one, he was referred to as Poinsettia King and Mr. Poinsettia. So he was a real icon in the early days of poinsettias. They had a greenhouse business and they found that they had a gap in the winter and they didn't get to sell much. So he had the idea to sell poinsettias. And this was in like the 1920s. He would sell cut poinsettia flowers on Hollywood Boulevard. And so this really caught on, and the family decided to start breeding poinsettias, and they would make great genetics for them and really started growing them. So they're really the ones we should thank for the nice, durable poinsettias we have today. So unfortunately, the Ecke family sold their genetics and their business to Doom and Orange, but we still use a lot of the cultivars and varieties that they designed and researched. So, and Paul Ecke Sr. actually had a room in his greenhouse called the torture room, because they really wanted to breed poinsettias to be long and durable. So, and I think most of the poinsettias we have today really do stand out in our homes. So a little bit about the makeup of a poinsettia. I think a lot of people assume they have big red flowers, and that's why they're pretty for Christmas. But actually, the red part of the plant, like you saw in that video, he explained the red part is actually called bracts. They're kind of a false petal, and then the real flower is in the center of these petals. It's the yellowish little buds in the middle, and those are called cyathea. And that's where the pollen is, and that's how the plants will reproduce. So, and that's kind of important to know. I wanted to point that out because I'll show you on this next slide. It's important to look at these when you are picking out a poinsettia. You want to look at the little cyathea in the middle, and you want some that are really tightly clustered and not a lot of pollen coming out. Because that way, if that's how the buds are, you know it's a nice poinsettia that's going to last a long time. If there's a lot of pollen coming out all over, that means it's probably a little too mature. So that's why it's important to understand kind of what the real flower is, so you can look at it when you're buying one. So this picture is a pretty good example. You can see there's a little bit of pollen there on the cyathea, but not too bad. So when you're at the store, there's a couple other things to think about. There's a ton to choose from. You can see pinks and even like dyed poinsettias with like glitter on them, which if that matches your Christmas decorations, then that's great. Lots to choose from. So kind of go in with a plan of what you want. Make sure you pick a plant that has clean, really dark green leaves. So the leaves at the bottom of the plant, make sure they're not torn. Hopefully they don't have any insects on them. Just kind of look it over before you purchase one. And then again, make sure you look at the cyathea and make sure they're not having a lot of pollen coming out. This is another good example, the picture there, just really tightly clustered buds that haven't started pollinating a lot yet. So this plant will last a really long time in your home, which is what we want. We want them to last definitely until Christmas. And then if you are shopping on a really cold day, like it probably is right now, we're getting colder weather. So make sure you are wrapping your poinsettia in paper or plastic when you take it home, because they can be damaged by a little bit of cold weather. So, and then if you are out shopping for other Christmas presents, make sure you either pick up your poinsettias last or take them home, because they will not do well in a cold car. So I did want to mention a few newer varieties that you can choose that came out this year. But like I said, there are many varieties to choose from. Really, whatever your Christmas decorations are or your favorite color, you should be able to find that. So go ahead and in the chat box, tell us what your favorite color is. Are you a traditional red person, or do you like white or pink? So let us know what your favorite is in the chat. But these are some new ones that I think are really pretty. This Jadot Pink series has really cool, unique bract shapes, kind of pointy colored, or pointy bracts that are kind of unique. And this is from Doom and Orange, actually. So like we talked about, it could have been an Eckie family genetic poinsettia. But the next one is Alaska. And I think this one's really cool because it has been bred to be like the brightest and the widest poinsettia. So breeders have been trying for a long time to get like a perfectly crisp and white poinsettia. And it's pretty hard. A lot of times they'll get kind of a yellow or cream color. But this Alaska, I think they finally got it down and it's really nice and white. And then lastly, this Christmas Angel. It's just a traditional red poinsettia. I think it's really beautiful. But it has been bred to have really long flower retention. So those little cyathea in the middle of the bracts, they have been bred to be superior and hold on for a very long time. So if you want a plant if you want to purchase your plant in the beginning of November and have it still look good by Christmas, this might be a good one to choose. All right, so when we're thinking about care, I think this is what scares a lot of people because they want to have a poinsettia, but they are worried about keeping it alive. It's really not too hard. What you need to do is place it in a sunny location. So they do like bright light. And sometimes, in winter, we have a lot of clouds, a lot of dreary days, but they need some nice, like a south-facing window or pretty bright light. But when you're giving them this light, try to keep it away from any cold drafts. If you put it by the window, but your window is kind of not sealed very well, that can really damage the poinsettia. So, and also don't let it touch the glass of the window because a lot of times our window panes are pretty cold. So they like temperatures of 60 to 70 degrees. So normally that's what we have in our homes, thankfully. If you have any temperatures above 75, that can kind of shorten the bloom of the plant. And then anything below 60 can cause some like root rot and just the plant won't do very well. So if you give it that location and that temperature, they should really thrive up until Valentine's Day or even a little bit longer. That's basically the two main things. And then another scary topic for people, I think, is watering. I will admit that poinsettias are a little finicky about their water, but it just takes some practice and it's really not too hard. My number one tip is just to check the plant regularly. Like every day or every other day, make sure that it has enough water that one of my favorite things to do is stick my finger into the soil. If it feels really wet, don't water it. Another way to test the watering is to pick up the pot. So kind of like this guy's doing in the picture, if you pick it up and it feels really light, that probably means it could use some water. But if it's heavy or feels like there's a lot of moisture in it, then you could wait a couple of days. So there's no real rule to how much or how often. Just make sure you're checking the plant regularly. When you do water it, you want to water it very thoroughly. So allow the water to flow out the bottom of the pot, out the drain holes. That way you're watering it clear down into the roots. So that means if you have it in a saucer or on a plate, the water should flow out onto it, but then don't let it set in that water. Make sure you're dumping out the saucer or the plate from that excess water because poinsettias are kind of prone to root rot. So if they're setting in water, it's not good for their roots. So make sure you're doing that. If it came in kind of one of those foil wrappers, a lot of them come in kind of a Christmassy wrapper, make sure you take that off when you're watering because water can accumulate and set in that wrapper and the roots will just kind of drown. So either cut some holes in the bottom of it or take that off to water. That way you're not overwatering it. They really don't like that wet feet of having their roots in water. So the next thing I want to spend a little bit of time on is how to get your poinsettia to rebloom. And I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this because it's totally fine to toss out your plant after Christmas or, January, February when it's starting to not look too great. That's totally fine. I know there are some people that want to try to keep it and want to experiment, and that's fine as well. Personally, I usually toss out my plants just because they're pretty cheap. They're easy to buy every year, and they're not bred and produced to be long lasting from year to year. They're bred to be big and beautiful for the month of December, not necessarily till next December. So that's just a heads up. It's totally fine to throw away a plant. Don't feel bad about it. But if you do want to experiment, here's the process. So there's kind of a calendar to follow. So in spring, May, or kind of in early summer, go ahead and cut it back a little bit. You can cut 3 to 6 inches back because usually by this time of year, they're getting tall and kind of gangly looking. So they need to be pinched back. And then this is also a good time to repot and divide the plant if you need to, and then place it in a sunny location. And then in summertime, when it starts getting consistently above like 65 to 70, go ahead and move it outside, and it will really enjoy the warm, sunny conditions outside. And then it will probably grow and be pretty tall and big. So you need to pinch it a couple times. And that just helps it to be more of a bushy shape, like what we find in the greenhouse when we're purchasing one. So a couple pinches, you can do like July, August, maybe even another one in the fall before you bring it back inside. So then when it starts getting colder again, in the fall time, make sure you bring that in so it's not getting hit by any low temperatures or frost. And then in about October 1st, what you have to do is begin a short day light treatment. So poinsettias are a Christmas plant, we know that. So they like Christmas conditions like we're getting now, short days and long, cool nights. So poinsettias bloom based off of the light period. So they really like to have a consecutive dark night. So they need to get around 14 hours of darkness each night. So that is why it's a little bit tricky to do this in your home, because 14 hours of darkness is quite a long time, and any little bit of light can break up that darkness. So if you even turn on a little lamp by your bedside table or something, that can break the 14 hours of darkness. So what I have heard of people doing, you can put it in a closet for 14 hours. You can cover it with a box, but it really has to have complete darkness for that long. So kind of an example would be the light hours would be from 8 to 5 p.m., 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And the trick is it does need light during the day, a little bit of light. So 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., you could put it by your sunny window. And then if you get home from work at 5, go ahead and put it in the closet and give it that 14 hours. But just make sure the next morning you get it back out and put it in the light. So definitely a long process, and you need to do this for about 8 to 10 weeks. So usually if you started in October or so, by Thanksgiving, you can stop that treatment and you should have new flower buds develop. So definitely kind of a fun experiment. But like I said, poinsettias are a little bit picky. They need that darkness. When I was growing poinsettias in my FFA class in high school, we had a little greenhouse attached to our high school. And we tried to grow poinsettias, but there was a parking lot light right outside the greenhouse that was on all night. And just that parking lot light really interrupted the darkness hours for the plant. So we may or may not have knocked that light out, but really they do need complete darkness. So that's the kicker when you're trying to get them to rebloom. Okay, so that was all I have about poinsettias. We're going to move on to some other holiday plants. But before I do that, I wanted to let you know that K-State greenhouses are selling poinsettias this year, and they're doing really nice curbside pickup, and you can order them online. So if you have not gotten your plants yet, I definitely recommend to look at the K-State Gardens. It is a fundraiser for them, which is really nice. I'll have Ariel put that link in the chat so you can look at all the varieties they have. So, all right, so we have a couple other trivia questions before we move on. So these are just kind of random facts about some holiday plants. So you can go ahead and launch that poll. I'll give you about 30 more seconds or so to do it. And don't worry, I can't see the answers that you're putting, specifically your answers. It's just going to do a percentage of who said what. All right. So the first question was, what traditional Christmas decoration is actually parasitic? And if you did not know, it's mistletoe. They survive, the little mistletoe plant survives by sucking nutrients from trees. So they kind of grow on trees in nature, and they stay green all winter because they are sucking the nutrients from that plant. So they're kind of a nasty plant, I guess. I don't know why we decide there's a tradition to kiss under them, but they are parasitic. And then it looks like a lot of people got the next one right. Poinsettias are not poisonous. So definitely don't believe that myth anymore. So the next holiday plant that we're going to go over is called amaryllis, and they are native to Peru and South Africa. They're a big bulb plant, and the Greek word amoroso means to sparkle. And I liked that little fact just because I think they really do sparkle. They're one of my favorite holiday plants to grow. And they come in lots of different colors. So you can see some of them there. Probably the most traditional are the reds and the whites and those type of colors, but you can get lots of different types. So, and the blooms, one of the favorite part of this is because the blooms get huge. They can get up to 10 inches in diameter. So they're very striking. They make a great Christmas decoration and display. When you're picking out your amaryllis bulbs, you want to pick out the biggest ones because really the bigger the bulb, the bigger the bloom that you're going to get. So definitely try to spend a little extra money on them to get a big, nice bulb because it'll be worth it when the flowers grow. So make sure that there's no signs of mold or decay or injury on the bulb. You want them to be really firm and healthy looking. And then if you see any new green growth, like any little leaves or buds coming out, that's good because you know that the bulb is still alive and will continue to grow. This picture here on the right is of a wax covered amaryllis bulb. So at first, when these came out, I was a little skeptical about them, but I have seen them work. They bloom and look great. I will say they're a little harder to keep from year to year just because of that wax layer. And then I think sometimes they can be a little top heavy because they do get pretty tall and they might kind of flop over. But they're really beautiful. This picture I actually took a couple weekends ago at my local Menards. So they definitely are selling them. They're kind of a cool marketing scheme, but I have seen them work. So if you want to try them, that's fun as well. Okay, if you got a bulb that you do need to put in a pot, you want to choose a pot that is about 1 to 2 inches wider than the bulb. So it kind of looks like they're going to be a little bit tight, but that's what they want. Amaryllis actually do pretty well when they are pot bound. So make sure you're choosing a container that is the right size and not too large. Fill up the pot about half full with a potting mix. Make sure you're using a nice organic mix and not just garden soil out of your garden. And then the top 1/3 to 1/2 of the bulb will be visible. So just like these pictures show, you don't want to completely bury the bulb because that can kind of lead to rot. So make sure you are planting it kind of like these pictures are showing. When you are starting to take care of the amaryllis, again, you want to give them a sunny window. So most houseplants you'll find really do need some sun. Make sure you're watering them when the potting media feels dry. Again, you can kind of stick your finger into the soil or pick up the pot and see what it feels like. Make sure you chose a pot that has drainage holes on the bottom because you do want the water to flow out. You don't want the roots to set in any water. You can give your amaryllis a little bit of fertilizer, not a lot, but just like a half strength houseplant fertilizer will help to signal the blooms to grow. And then once it does start to flower, so when you see these really pretty big blooms, take it out of that direct sun because the high sun can really start to decay the flowers and they won't last as long if they're in the bright light. And the blooms really do last a long time. It's such a fun thing to do in winter to have these beautiful colors. So after they have flowered and they're starting to fade, again, it's totally fine to throw away the plant. But if you decide you want to try to keep the bulb from year to year, make sure you're cutting off the bloom because they will start to make seeds and you don't want the energy to go to the seeds. You want it to go back into the bulb. So place it back in that sunny location and just continue to grow it, kind of like you do any other house plant. Give it water and fertilizer, and then you can also remove that stalk when it starts to fade. But they're pretty easy, and actually the leaves, you can see in this back plant, they look pretty nice. It's just a house plant. So, and then you have to signal it to rebloom. So if you are keeping it every year, next fall, you're going to want to put this on your calendar to try to get it to rebloom. So you have to kind of force it into dormancy. So what you do is put it in a cold, dark location, somewhere like 50 to 60 degrees. So maybe like a basement or your garage for about 8 weeks or 8 to 12 weeks. And what I like to do is if I am going to put it in this dormancy period, I set an alarm on my phone for 8 weeks later, or put it on your calendar so you know when the 8 weeks is up. And then after that dormancy period, you can bring it back into that sunny window, give it some more water and fertilizer, and you should have a new flower develop within 4 to 6 weeks. So that's another fun experiment you can try to do if you're a real plant nerd and want to try to keep your plants. But again, it's fine to toss them and buy new every year. Okay, so we have one more Christmas trivia before we talk about our next holiday plant. So this one is like some presidential White House trivia. Okay, I'll give you about 10 more seconds to answer the question. We'll see how much people know about the White House Christmas history. All right, so the first question was, who was the first president to have a tree in the White House? The answer is Benjamin Harris. So he was the first president, I guess, to have a tree there, and that was in 1889. And then which president objected to having a tree in the White House? The correct answer is Teddy D. Roosevelt. So he felt that it was wrong to cut down trees just for decoration. So instead of doing that, he decided to establish the U.S. Forestry Service. So, and it helps to protect nature. We still have the Forestry Service today, and it's a part of K-State. So he was a pretty awesome president. All right, so we'll move on. The next plant we're going to talk about is holiday cacti. So this is another popular plant you see in greenhouses right now or in retail stores because they bloom during the holidays. So there's actually different varieties or different types of this plant. There's Thanksgiving cactus, Christmas cactus, and an Easter cactus. So they're actually all in the Cactaceae family, and then they're all in the Schlumbergia genus. So they are kind of related to each other. The Easter cactus is a little bit different. It used to be in a different genus, but recently they changed it, and so they're all in the same family. But so you might have one of these plants and you might not know which one you actually have. So I'm going to show you a great way to distinguish between these three. So one thing to look at is the stem segments. So since they're cacti, they don't have true leaves. So what you're seeing here are flattened stem segments. So this is where photosynthesis happens, just in the part of the stem. They're actually called phylloclads. So one way to tell the difference is Thanksgiving cactus has very pointy edges. So you can see in this picture, this top one with the pointy sides is Thanksgiving cactus. Christmas cactus is a little bit more rounded, kind of has like a scalloped stem segment. And then Easter cactus is even more rounded and almost smooth looking. So then another difference of how to tell them apart is by looking at the flower. So if yours are blooming right now, take a close look at the flower. Christmas cactus has a purplish brown anther on the flower, and Thanksgiving cactus has yellow anthers. So this picture right here with the white flower, these little yellow parts are the anthers. That's where the pollen is produced for the flower. And so you can see these are yellow. So this means this plant right here is a Thanksgiving cactus. So you can also see the pointy leaves or stem segments of the plant. So, and then kind of the last clue of which plant you have, if you have one of these, is when they bloom. So they kind of bloom according to their name. Thanksgiving cactus will bloom first, probably already has bloomed. And then Christmas cactus will bloom a little bit later into December and January. And then, as you might guess, Easter cactus blooms in the spring, close to Easter. So kind of a fun way to see which plant you have or what you might find in your greenhouse. So these plants are native to Brazil, and they're actually very long-lived plants. So unlike the last two we talked about, these can live for hundreds of years. They are native to the rainforest in Brazil. So as you might find in a rainforest, they like a lot of humidity and bright, kind of filtered light. So I like to kind of explain where plants are from native because it kind of helps you know how to care for them in your home. You'll know kind of the conditions and the weather that they're native to. So they like temperatures about 65 to 70. And then one of my favorite facts about this plant is that it is an epiphyte. So it grows on other plants. And I think that's really cool. So in those rainforests, what they do is their roots kind of attach to trees or rocks, and then they kind of hang down. So that's why they kind of have pendulous stems. It makes them great for hanging baskets. So keep the soil moist, but not soggy. You don't want it to be super wet and muddy. So when they're setting buds, so if this time of year, they're putting on buds, you do want to keep it pretty moist. If you let it dry out, the buds can drop off the plant. But other times of the year, since it is a cactus, it can tolerate a little bit of drier conditions. And then if you are wanting to promote growth of your plant, you can give it some fertilizer, but do that in like the spring and the summer when it's actively putting on new stem segments. Okay, so this is one of my favorite plants because it often will rebloom on its own each year. I have a Thanksgiving cactus that just started blooming on its own. I did not do anything to it to manipulate the light. So that's really great if you want to have blooms, carefree blooms during the winter. But if you are struggling, go ahead and give it that light treatment. So they like the short days and the long, cool nights. And that can help promote it to bloom. So 12 hours of darkness, and then put it back in the bright light once you're done with that. These plants are really easy to propagate. So you can create new plants and regift them. All you have to do is cut off about 2 to 3 of those stem segments, like this picture is showing, and then let them dry out for a couple days just to callus over, and then repot them, and they will develop roots and be a really nice little plant that you can give away for a Christmas gift. So it is helpful to plant a couple in one pot like this is showing here, and then do this in like spring or summer, and by Christmas you'll have a nice little gift. The next plant you might see in a greenhouse this time of year or local box store is Norfolk Island pine. And this is really popular because it is kind of a small living Christmas tree. A lot of times you'll see them with little ornaments or glitter on them to be more festive. They are native to the tropics, so there is a Norfolk Island. It's in the Pacific Ocean, kind of close to New Zealand, and that's where they grow. And they can actually get up to 200 feet tall on those islands, but don't worry, they've been bred and made to be a house plant now, so they will not get that big in your home. But they really are a great plant to have around. You care for them pretty much like any other house plant, bright indirect light, keeping the soil damp but not too soggy, and then you can fertilize it in the spring and summer. So this is actually not a true pine, so the name is a little deceiving. It's a tropical conifer, not an actual pine. So paper whites are next, and this is probably, I know I've said they're all my favorite, but this is my favorite Christmas plant to grow. It's really great to do this in like, even after Christmas, January or February. Forcing bulbs is so much fun. It's a great activity in the middle of winter when you're just feeling the blues, but this will give you some nice color in your house and some really good smells. These smell amazing. So they are a tender bulb. They are in the Narcissus genus, so they're related to daffodils. If you've ever grown daffodils, this is kind of in the same genus, but these are tender. So we do have to grow them inside. They only grow in the ground in really warm regions like Florida and California. You can plant them in a container with soil, or I like to do them in a vase with just some water and pebbles. So like this picture shows, you can put a few of the bulbs in a vase together and then water them. And that's a great way to grow them, I think. They will bloom in about 4 to 6 weeks. And then after they bloom, don't try to keep these bulbs. They use so much energy being forced that you just need to toss them each year. And make sure not to submerge the bulbs, because only the roots are really what needs water. And if you've ever grown paper whites, you know they smell amazing. I love having them in my office in the winter. All right, one of the last plants we'll talk about is another type of bulbs, other bulbs, spring flowering bulbs. They can be forced to bloom in the winter as well. So also a really fun activity if you have kids. This is great to do with kids. You can use lots of different types, daffodils, hyacinths, tulips, crocus bulbs. They can all be forced to bloom. So what you need to do is give them a cold treatment similar to, the winter that they would get if we had planted them in the fall and then they bloom in the spring. So they need 12 to 16 weeks of a cold treatment. So you can pot them up and put them in a refrigerator or a cold basement. It needs to be about 32 to 45 degrees, so pretty cold, and then leave them there for around 12 weeks. So again, you can set a reminder on your calendar so when you pull them out, they're ready to bloom. So you place them in a bright window and you should see blooms in a couple weeks, and then the blooms will last up to a month. So It's a really fun thing to do, and these smell amazing too. Hyacinths are so pretty and just a way to beat the winter blues, I think. I remember my grandma would have all these lined up on her windowsill. She had these hyacinth vases. That's what these are called. They're vases made especially for forcing bulbs. So the bulb kind of sets in this top portion, and then the roots grow down into the water. So, and then again, make sure you're throwing away the bulb after you're done with it because they will not grow outside. They use too much of their energy. All right, so I just wanted to quickly mention a few other holiday plants that you might see if you're going to a flower shop or a greenhouse. Go ahead and comment what your favorite plant is in the chat so we can know what you're going to be buying this year. But you might see a Christmas pepper. These are really fun. Peppers are actually really popular in Europe a long time ago. They used them as decorations and ornamental plants before they even knew that peppers could be eaten. So really cool. I actually went to my local greenhouse over the weekend and they had some Christmas peppers. So I was really excited to see that. And then you might also see cyclamen. They have really pretty blooms, and kalanchoe, which is a succulent plant that has really nice colorful blooms as well. So if you have any questions on how to care for these plants, your local extension agent would be a great person to talk to about care for other houseplants. And then lastly, I just wanted to mention that I think plants make such great Christmas and holiday gifts. So if you are kind of struggling to know what to get someone, they might like a plant. So it doesn't have to be holiday plants. It can be succulents. This is rosemary right here. You can give out herbs, put them in a cute little container, and it's the perfect gift to give away. So I think houseplants are a great hobby for people to take up right now, especially when we're all stuck at home a little bit more. So plants, greenhouse, or garden center gift cards are awesome gifts, and also gardening books or tools. Seeds are perfect for the plant nerd in your life. So, all right, that is all I have. I am happy to answer some questions, and here's my contact information if you want to email me or anything like that.
All right, well, thank you, Cassie. We have about 9 minutes left and a lot of questions. So we will start our Q&A session. Ariel, if you want to start that. And we will get as many questions answered as we can for 1 o'clock. But like Cassie said, her contact information is located there. So if we don't get to your question, please feel free to reach out to her or any of us that are with K-State Horticulture.
Thanks, Lauren. Okay, we have a few questions. The first is about poinsettia. How far should they be pinched back in the summertime?
That's a good question. So they will probably get pretty tall and leggy if you're growing them outside in the summer. So you can pinch them back pretty hard, about 3 to 6 inches of the plant left. And you want to do that a couple times. And that promotes them to just be more bushier and be prettier like we see in the greenhouses and stores this time of year.
Awesome. So the next one is also about poinsettia. What causes the sooty looking black spots? I believe this should be on the bracts.
That's probably a type of mold. My first guess would be that you might be overwatering or you might be pouring water on the bracts. Try not to get water on any of the leaves or bracts. It could also be that it's kind of in a draft or something. It's staying too cold. If you have it close to a window and there's some cold air coming through, it can really harm the poinsettias.
Okay. The next question is about that transition, that 8 to 10 weeks of shortened day for the poinsettia. Do the water needs change at all during that time?
I would not water it quite as much just because you are putting it in the darkness. And if you have a lot of water in the pot, it can cause root rot. But give it a little bit. Don't let it obviously be completely dry, but definitely don't let it get muddy or soggy in the pot.
Great. And then talking about the red bracts on poinsettias, are those new leaves or are they the green leaves that turn red?
They're kind of a modified petal type leaf. So they're called bracts. The true leaves are the green ones there at the bottom, and the bracts are the colorful ones at top. So.
Cool. This question is actually about propagating poinsettia. Can you do that with seeds or only with cuttings? And will the bract coloring be true to the parent?
Wow. I have personally never tried to propagate poinsettias. Have you,
I
Ariel?
can help a little bit. I have not done it at home because when something costs $9.99, I just throw it away, like you said. But when I worked in a commercial greenhouse, we did propagate them by cuttings. I don't have any experience with by seed, but at home, I think it would be incredibly difficult because sanitation is so important for those cuttings.
Yeah, that would be a fun experiment to try at home.
Yeah, why not try it? Okay, so the next one is talking about amaryllis. How long from planting the bulb to bloom? So when should they plant it if they want it to be blooming for Christmas?
I think it kind of can depend on the variety that you're getting, but I would say about maybe 4 weeks or so, 3 to 4 weeks probably, if you're putting it in a nice location with lots of light. And a lot of times when you buy poinsettia bulbs or amaryllis bulbs in the store, they're already kind of having some growth come on. They might even have a little bud sticking up, which would make it go even quicker. So
Nice. Okay, the next question is, I believe, talking about Christmas cacti. What causes the buds to drop suddenly?
my guess would be that it got too dry. So if the soil completely dries out, it will cause the buds to fall off and it won't bloom. So definitely when they're setting buds, make sure that you're watering it consistently, checking the soil every day or every other day just to make sure it doesn't get too dry.
Okay. The next question is talking about the amaryllis that you were referring to that are covered in wax. This person heard if you actually take that wax off after blooming, that you could keep the bulb. Do you know if that's true?
I have never tried that, but I bet that's true. They're probably just dipped in a couple layers of wax and you could probably peel it off pretty easy and try to get it to rebloom. But again, they're really cheap. I think the picture I took at Lowe's was only like $10. So if you don't want to go to all that work, just pick up a new one each year.
Awesome. And then talking about Thanksgiving cactus, do you find that they're any easier to grow than the other cactus?
I have not found that. I think they're all pretty similar. I think Thanksgiving cactus are starting to be more common. You usually will see them at Walmart or Lowe's just because they're blooming a little bit earlier. And so people want to buy a nice blooming plant. But I think the care is pretty similar.
Okay. And then another on the Thanksgiving cactus, this person is saying that their cactus looks wilted, but it's nice and moist. Do you have any thoughts about what could be going on there?
I kind of would wonder like what the location is, if it is getting nice bright sun, or maybe even too much water. Since they are a cacti, they don't need a ton just when they're setting blooms. So I'm wondering if it's either too much or too little water.
One on amaryllis again. This person's only getting leaf growth. They're not getting any flowering. Do you have suggestions?
They can take a little bit, so I would not give up hope. The leaves do come out first and then the bloom will come up after that. So maybe be a little more patient, see if it comes out. But sometimes you might have gotten a bad bulb and maybe it didn't have a flower bud inside of it. So I would maybe toss that one and try a new one.
Awesome. And then, are white poinsettias harder to keep pretty than the red ones? This might be referring to maybe some of the browning that you see on the bracts of the white.
Okay. That could be. I'm not totally sure. I usually go for the traditional red poinsettias, but yeah, I know white plants do tend to show, every little damage that they get. So it could be that they are a little bit harder to keep looking nice.
White shirts, white poinsettias, both very difficult to keep white.
That's
another one, Angela, we might need a little bit of clarification from you on this. How should I store the amaryllis bulbs in soil? Are you talking about, maybe you understand, Cassie, storing them prior to potting? I'm not totally sure what she meant.
Yeah, I'm not totally sure. If it's on that dormancy period, it's fine to keep them in a little bit of soil, make sure they're not soggy because they can rot when they're in that cold treatment, or you can kind of unpot them and they'll be fine too in the dormancy period. So.
Okay. And then the last question from the Q&A, where can I plant a poinsettia outside in Northwest Kansas?
Ooh, well, you know what? That might be a fun experiment too, but I don't think they would come back from year to year. So
Not sure that we have those Mexico growing conditions.
yeah, little bit colder here.
Awesome. And then the last one that I'm seeing from the chat, can you throw the amaryllis bulb in your compost after it has bloomed?
Oh, I have never thought to do that, but I don't know why you couldn't.
Awesome. That is all of the questions we have from the Q&A and from the chat. Lots of people saying thank you and that you did a great job.
Thank you.
Well, once again, thank you for joining our K-State Garden Hour series hosted by K-State Research and Extension. We're so glad that you could be here today and learn about holiday horticulture with Cassie. We do have several interesting webinar talks coming up, so be sure to visit the K-State Garden Hour website, which April will send in the chat, to see all of our upcoming topics. The session is recorded and will be posted by tomorrow afternoon on the same website we just mentioned. After the webinar ends today, you should also receive a prompt to take an evaluation survey. Please fill this out. We would greatly appreciate your feedback. If you have any other questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us at lowercase ksumg@ksu.edu. And Ariel will send that over chat as well. Thank you again and have a great week.